Boker Tov, Chodesh Tov, Good Shabbos. Today's daf yomi for Bava Basra, Kuf Chaf Test. Bava Basra 129. The daf is dedicated for Shmir for the Chayalim. That's all for the Shuyim and Yeshua for Am Yisrael on this Eis Tzara. We're going to start on 128b, 5 lines from the bottom. The Gemara has told us that Rabbi Abba has sent 7 halachos, 7 different rulings he sent to Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama. And that was what we did in yesterday's stuff. So Darish Marzutra, so 4 lines from the bottom on 128b, Marzutra taught Mishmei Rav Shimi Barashi Hilchasa B'Kol Hanishmaita Kedishalchay Rabbi Abba Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama. That in all these 7 cases, the law was like Rabbi Abba sent. Now the first part of today's daf is just a conclusion of yesterday's daf. So it's if you missed yesterday, you just have to be patient for the next few minutes. Armoy Ravino Ravashi to Rav Nachman Mai. Well, what are you talking about? What about the case where Rabbi Abba ruled and his ruling was against Rav Nachman? And that was the case about whether orphans can collect from an estate if they could collect the slaves. Normally, orphans can only collect real estate, and not movables, but are slaves considered movables or real estate? So Rabbi Abba said they can, and Rav Nachman said they can't. Why would we rule like Rabbi Abba? The halacha is always like Rav Nachman in monetary matters because he was the Av Bezdin. So the Gemara says, yeah, Amrulay ain't go someone. Actually, we have a different text of Rabbi Abba. He didn't say you collect, he said you cannot collect. In fact, Rav Nachman himself, and then it says, and so too does Rav Nachman say. So according to this version, Rabbi Abba is not actually arguing with Rabbi Nachman. So if that's the case, when you say the law is like Rabbi Abba, it has to be that somebody else might think he's coming to say, I posking like Rabbi Abba over this person. Who is he posking like? And now on the top of 129a, Ila Fuke mid Rava, if you're saying it's to exclude the position of Rava, this refers to the matter where Rabbi Abba said that a third generation can testify against the second generation. What we call a first cousin once removed can testify in a case about his first cousin once removed. And Rava added on, a third generation can even testify about a first generation, i.e. a great uncle about a great nephew about a great uncle. If you want to say that the rule is like Rabbi Abba and not like Rava, most of it's not clear that Rava is arguing with Rabbi Abba. He's just adding on. They're not necessarily arguing. And he Mar Bar Avashi. And if you want to say the law is like Rabbi Abba and not like Mar Bar Avashi said you can even a grandson can even testify about his grandfather. And you want to say the law is like Rabbi Abba and not like Mar Bar Avashi. No, the Gemara already said the law is not like him. A grandson cannot testify about grandfather. And and then we had the next ruling, which was that Rabbi Abba said if you were blind and then if you had sight and then you became blind before you were able to testify, that he ruled a good Chodesh Tov and good Shabbos. We're on 129a. So the Rabbi Abba ruled that you cannot testify, and these 3 Amoraim ruled that under in limited circumstances you can, but it can't be that he's coming to teach us not like them. Ha'isosvu, they were already refuted by a brisa from Erchin. El afukim di Rabbi Yochanan. Oh, so it's to tell us the law is like Rabbi Abba and not like Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan ruled like the Rabbanon, and Rabbi Abba ruled like Rabbi Huda with respect to whether or not a father is believed to say that this one is my child, this is my firstborn, even though there's a presumptive status against it. Rabbi Abba ruled like Rabbi Yehuda, that we believe him, and Rabbi Yochanan ruled like the Rabbanon, that we don't. And so we're saying that's to exclude us. Umi at kafta demar paravashi, and it's also to tell us that it's not like the question of it's not like the maskif, it's not like the contradiction that Marbar or the challenge that Marbar Ravashi raised against Rabbi Abba's point that a person who testifies as a partial admission about a loan, and then the witnesses say he actually doesn't owe anything. Rabbi Abba says still you have to take an oath. And Marbar Ravashi had challenged that you shouldn't have to take an oath, and we're saying the law is like Rabbi Abba. Okay, so that's the coda to yesterday's Gemara, and now we begin the next sugya, which is 129a, that it's 5 lines from the top. It said if somebody divides their assets, then a person is allowed to give away their assets however they want if they do it as a gift. But if they give it as a Yerusha, they say it's an inheritance, then you have to follow the specific guidelines of the Torah. But let's say you use the language, and our Mishnah said if you use the language of both gift and inheritance, then it's a gift and it works. So the Gemara says, what is the circumstances? What's the language? So today's daf is a very technical daf, very technical language, contracts they use to determine whether something is considered a gift or an inheritance. So the first thing Gemara says, the Mishnah said, if you use the language of gift, whether it's at the beginning of the contract, the statement, the middle, or the end, it's considered a gift. So what does it mean to say the language of a gift in the beginning or in the middle or in the end? So Kiyasa Rav Dimi, we're going to have 4 approaches to this in the Gemara. The first comes from Rav Dimi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So throughout Shas, this is a methodological something to take in mind. Whenever Rav Dimi comes in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, almost always he's followed a few lines later by Ravin, who comes down from from Israel to the land of Babylon and reports something else in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So first is the statement that Rav Dimi gave in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. It says if the man who's dying says Tinas and Sadaponis Laponi V'Yarashah, he says give this field to this person, and he will inherit it. Zui matana b'tchila. That's considered where you use the language of a gift in the beginning, and it's a gift. If he says Yirsha v'tinas and lo, he says inherit it and give it to him. Zui matana b'sof. That's a gift at the end. If he says Yirsha v'tinas and lo v'yirsha, says inherit it, give it to him, and inherit it. Zui matana b'emtza. This is a gift in the middle, and all these cases work. But says Rav Dimi, and this is the part which is we're going to dispute about. That's dafka of adam echa v'sada echas. Where do we say that if you use the language of a gift and an inheritance that it works? If you're giving it to one person and you're giving him one field, that's dafka adam echa v'sada echas. Adam echa shtei sados. But if it's one man and 2 fields, or sada achas or shnei bnei adam, or if it's 1 field and 2 people, then there's too much ambiguity, and then we're not going to accept it. Whatever he has said as a gift is specific to a gift, and the inheritance, whatever he said as a gift is a gift, and it doesn't work on the field that he says will be an inheritance. Meaning to say, if he says to one person, take this field as a gift and this as an inheritance, then the only the field that he gave as a gift works as a gift, and the other one is an inheritance. That's what Rav Dimi says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. It only works if it's one-on-one. Whereas Rabbi Lazar argues, with Rabbi Yochanan. He says, "Afilu adam echad shtei sados, or sada echad shnei bnei adam." No, even if it's 1 man and 2 fields, or 1 field and 2 men, then it works if you use the language of both gift and inheritance. But shtei sados shnei bnei adam lo. But if it's 2 men and 2 fields, then that language doesn't work. So that's the first approach. That's Rav Dimi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan versus Rabbi Lazar. That Rabbi Yochanan says it only works 1-on-1, but not 1-on-2, but Rabbi Lazar says it works even 1-on-2, but not if it's 2-on-2. Comes along Ravin in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Kiasa Ravin, when Ravin came along, he said, Tinas and Sada Ponis, V'yirish Ponis, Sada Ponis. He says, what does it mean? He says, if you say give this field to such and such a person, and this person will inherit this field, Rabbi Yochanan Omar Kana. Meaning to say, if you say give this field to this person and inherit it, and inherit Ponis, Sada Ponis, and let this other person V'yirish, and let this other person inherit this field. So under those circumstances, he's going to say that under those circumstances, he says he gave 2 fields to 2 people. Then Rabbi Yochanan says it works. If you give 2 fields to 2 people, basically Tinas and Sada Ponis Laponi, V'yirash Ploni Sada Ponis Laponi, meaning they gave 2 fields to 2 different people, then, and one is a gift and one is an inheritance, Rabbi Yochanan says, then even the one who got it using the language of an inheritance, it works. It's considered a gift. And Rabbi Lazar says, lo kana. Rabbi Elazar says it doesn't work under those circumstances. So basically, the difference is there's a difference. So comes along Amarle Abai or Ravin. Abai says to Ravin, Isnachtu on Chada, Viskaftu on Chada. One of them we can make sense of. We can dovetail with the earlier rulings that we had, but one of them is a challenge. How so? Bishlama the Rebbe Elazar, where you said that Rebbe Elazar says, according to Ravin, that if you say two people and one is a gift and one is an inheritance, and he says that under these circumstances it does not acquire it, we could explain it's not a difficulty. Why? Kam ba'adam echad ushtei sados, kam shnei b'nei adam ushtei sados. Where it's one person in two fields, then Rebbe Elazar would say it works. Or if it's two people in two fields, then it doesn't work. Rabbi Yochanan kasha, but it's a contradiction, Rabbi Yochanan, because here you say that Rabbi Yochanan says that if it's two people in two fields, it acquires it, whereas in the earlier approach, it said, Rabbi Yochanan said that if it's one person and two fields, according to the earlier approach, Rabbi Yochanan says, according to Rav Dimi, that it will not work. And here you're saying even two person, two fields works according to Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara says, Amorai nenu v'aliba de Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, so there's two Amoraim arguing about what Rabbi Yochanan said, Rav Dimi versus Ravin. So the Gemara says, now we have a fifth approach. That's the approach of Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish Amar, or actually, third approach. We have Rav Dimi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Ravin in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar. Now we have a fourth approach, which is Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says, even if you say that two people in two fields would work, that only works. Reish Lakish says, Amar lo kana achi Amar poni yershu sada pones uponi shenasatim b'matana v'yirashim. He says it only works if you use that specific language where you have a language of inheritance at the beginning and the end, and in the middle you say a gift twice. And so that's the specific way Reish Lakish says it has to work. But Plukta, in this dispute, Amar Avhuna lo shanu al adam echad usada echas. This only works if you have one man and one field. Av adam echad ushtei sados and sada echas ushnei bnei adam lo. So Rav Hamnuna is just like Rav Dimi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. And Rav Nachman says, "Afilu adam echad ushtei sados usada echas ushnei bnei adam." He says it even works like that. Av ushtei sados ushnei bnei adam lo. So Rav Nachman rules like Rabbi Elazar is ruling, and Rav Sheshes says, "Afilu shtei sados ushnei bnei adam." And Rav Sheshes rules like Ravin in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. It even works with two fields and two men. Amar Rav Sheshes menav minoah. So Rav Sheshes says, how can I prove to you that it even works like two fields and two men? I'll prove to you from the following case. Haomer, a person says to he's dying, and he says to his people around him, Tenu shekel, tenu, so it's the language of a gift. Tenu shekel livni b'Shabbos. I want to support my kids, so give them a shekel for a week to support them. Really only tain selah, but really, you know what? He didn't adjust for the what's it called? The cost of living increase. No, cost of living increase. You know, like inflation. He didn't adjust, but really, you need a selah. You really need a selah, not a shekel. So no single on selah. The people understand that he wanted to give them enough, not a lot of money, but enough to survive for each week, so they give them a selah. But im amar, so we see a language of gift works. V'im amar al titnu an el shekel. But he says only give them a shekel. Then ain't no still an el shekel. Then he really only wants to give them a shekel, so that's all that works. V'im amar, but let's say so that's all you give. V'im amar, now is where it gets relevant to us. Let's say he says im mesu yirshu acherim tachteim. So he uses the language of gift and an inheritance, and he says if they die, we're on the top of 129b. That others inherit in their place, then Bein Shamar Tenu, Bein Shamar Al Titnu, whether he said a language of gift or only give them this, ain't no one ela shekel. Then you only give them a shekel because he clearly wants the minimum amount of money. But that the actual case here is not as relevant. It's not really relevant for us. But the reason why we're bringing it down is here there's two fields, two different people getting the two different fields. And it works. He can give it to them, even though he also says inherit. So therefore, this proves, like Rav Sheshes said, which is also Rav in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Sheshes raised this proof, who most of law. Rav Sheshes brought down this as a question on the approaches, on the other approaches. He was intellectually honest, even though he had this tremendous question on them. He brought it down as an answer. He says, "No, what we're talking about here is Beroy L'Yorsho. The people who he was giving it to were actually capable of inheriting it." And so that's all he was saying. And this is the people who are basically, and you're allowed to disinherit the others, because we're going to see the position of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, goes according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, who says that you're allowed to give it to one person only if he's roy to inherit it. Meaning that you give it to one brother above all the other brothers. So that's what was going on here. First says give it, and after they're not there, let this one inherit it. So it has nothing to do with, it's not a gift, it's an inheritance. So Amar Rav Ashi, another attempt to prove like Rav Sheshes comes from Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says Tashma. This comes also from later on in our Gemara. We're going to have this in a few days. If he says Nechase loch v'acharayach yirish poni v'acharayach yirish poni, the guy says, I want my assets to go to you, and after you, I want them to go to this person, and after that person, after it goes to you, this person will inherit. I want it to go to Reuven. After Reuven, Shimon will inherit. After Shimon, Levi will inherit. And those are the instructions he gave. And he basically used the first language was a gift, and the second and third was an inheritance. Umeis Rishon. Then the first one dies. Kana Sheni. Then after the first one dies, the second one got it. Meis Sheni. If the second one dies, Kana Shlishi. Then the third one gets it. But if the second one dies while the first one is still alive, then the law is the third one doesn't get it at all, because the second one never got it, so the assets go to the first person. But that's also the only relevant reason why we're bringing it down is he starts off by saying it's a gift and then an inheritance, and we give it as a gift. It's like two people in two fields, and it works. In the case where the first one dies, and then the second one dies, and the third one dies, and then they all get it. If you want to say also this is the same case like before, where the second person and the third person were both in line to inherit, and it's like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. It can't be. Why? Why would we say that once the second one dies, the third one inherits? That's not the extent of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka's ruling. He doesn't rule that that's the law. Hashalach Rav Aka Breder Rav Avia L'divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Nechase Lach V'Acharayach L'Poni V'Rishon Royal Yarsho Ein L'Sheni B'Makom Rishon Klum. So he says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, who says that if you could give it to all the brothers, you could say, I'm giving it to one brother amongst all the brothers. He doesn't allow you to say, I'm giving it to this brother amongst all the brothers, and after that, I'm giving it to the second brother amongst all the brothers, because an inheritance, once you give it, it's an inheritance, and it goes down that line. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka wouldn't be able to say that this is a language of inheritance. So this is a language of a gift. And we see from here a specific proof for Rav Shesh's position that even if it's two people and two fields, and one is a language of gift and the other one uses a language of inheritance, it works as a gift. And so therefore, tiyufta dekul tiyufta. So a refutation of all the other positions that argued with Rav in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and also Rav Shesh's position. Well, maybe you want to say, do you want to say it's also a refutation of Reish Lakish? Because Reish Lakish said it only works if you use a language of inheritance followed by two languages of gift followed by inheritance, and he doesn't use that here. So this is also a refutation of Reish Lakish. Mar says, no, we're not going to say that. For Tizbra, do you really think? Do you want to say Reish Lakish's position is rejected? Rabbi said the law is like Reish Lakish in these three specific halachos, and this is one of those halachos. What are those three halachos? In the Gemara in Yevamos says The cases, one of those is our three cases here. The other case we had on Bava Basra Beis, where he says he writes all his assets to his son, and the son sold it while the father was alive. Rabbi Yochanan said the purchaser hasn't acquired a Rish Lakish, as he said. He has, and the other case has to do with Yavamos. But anyway, so this is one of the cases where the law is like Rish Lakish. So how can we say the law is like Rish Lakish when Rish Lakish wouldn't say it works in this case? So why is this case not a contradiction to Rish Lakish? The Gemara says, "L'kasha kam betoch kedei dibur kan la'achar kedei dibur." So Rish Lakish would say that why does it work here when Rish Lakish says that it only works where you use a language of Yerusha followed by Matana and Matana and followed by Yerusha? That was Achar Kedei Dibur. That's where he responded. He used the language to uproot it later on. But here it's a language of Toch Kedei Dibur. What? Okay, let's just stop for a moment. What is Toch Kedei Dibur? You say something and then you immediately change your mind and you want to uproot it, what you said, like, I'm selling this to you, no, I'm not. So how long do you have to say that? So Toch Kedei Dibur, within the time it takes to speak. What does that mean? That concept is within the time it takes to say, Gemara Mako says, according to say, Shalom Alecha Rabbi, peace upon you, Rabbi, or according to Yerushalmi, or according to the Gemara, elsewhere, it's Shalom, and Bava Kama, it says it's Shalom Alecha Rabbi Umori. So, okay, it's either 3 words or 4 words. And so that's called Toch Kedei Dibur, and you have the ability to uproot it. So that's what Rish Lakish was saying, that here it works the expression of Matana, what he said even though he said it with Yerusha, because it's as though he acquired all of them with a gift, because he changed his mind right after he said Yerusha, right away he said Matana. What's the whole reason why we allow you to change it? Toch Kedei Dibur. So Tosfos says something beautiful. Rabbeinu Tam says, the rabbis made this takon of Toch Kedei Dibur because they were worried that your Rebbe would be passing by in the marketplace and you wouldn't stop to greet him. You'd want to finish your business deal. And so therefore they said you have the ability to say Shalom Alecha Rabbi and then continue as though you didn't interrupt what you were saying. So this all is about to teach us the idea that greeting your Rebbe overrides the business deal that you're engaged in. So therefore the Gemara says, Rish Lakish would say that this case is a case of Toch Kedei Dibur, and therefore it works as a gift, even though you said a language of Yerusha. So the Gemara says, Ve'hilchasa Toch Kedei Dibur Kedibur Dami, and it's always the case that Toch Kedei Dibur is like speech, Levar, with the exception of 2 cases where it doesn't work as speech. What are these 2 cases? Avodas kochavim, idolatry. If you designate something for idolatry, it's such a terrible thing that we don't even allow you to change it Toch Kedei Dibur. And kiddushin, betrothal. If you say to a woman, will you marry me? And they say, oh no, it's just a gift to you. This ring is not a marriage, it's a gift. So then we say that she's still married out of a doubt, a suffix, ambiguous marriage, and therefore, as a consequence, she would need to get a divorce from you. So those 2 cases are the exception. We have actually 5 minutes. I want to keep going a little bit because I'm not able to do the 12 noon daf today. So we have just do the next Mishnah very briefly. And I'm not here this Shabbos. I'll try to put it up on the YouTube. But the Mishnah says, Omer Ish Poni, and it's also related to what we were saying. If a person says, Ish Poni Hirasheni, the Makom Sheesh Bas, Biti Tirasheni. So the person says, this person will inherit me. And he says this, even though he has a daughter who's really supposed to inherit him, meaning to say he wants to give it to a stranger or his brother instead of his daughter, or he says, Biti Tirasheni b'macham she'esh ben, or he says, my daughter should inherit me when he actually has a son. Well, Amar Klum. He can't do that. The inheritance has to go to the one who the Torah stipulates. He's stipulating against what's written in the Torah. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka gives his position. He says, if he said this about somebody who is supposed to inherit, meaning to say he wants to give it to, let's say he has 4 sons, and he says, I only want son number 2 to inherit me. then that works because that son was in line to inherit. So he could give it to him above all the others who were also in line because he was in line to inherit. But Dvarav al Misha Ein Ra Liyarsho Ein Harav Kayamim. But if he says it's about someone who's not supposed to inherit, then it doesn't work. So we'll stop the daf here. We'll say to